habari za jioni na habari za usiku. Usiku wa kuamkia leo, kwa sababu sasa ni saa 6 karibu na dakika 25, tumepata kwa masikitiko makubwa, tumepata msiba mkubwa. Mzee wetu, Mzee Benjamin William Mkapa, rais wa awamu ya 3, amefariki. Amefariki kwenye hospitali Dar es Salaam ambako alikuwa amelazwa. Ni waombe wa Tanzania tulipokee hili, na tumepata msiba mkubwa, na tuendelee kumwombea mzee wetu Rais mstaafu Benjamin William Mkapa, ambaye ametangulia mbele ya haki. Taarifa zingine zitaendelea kutolewa, lakini mzee Mkapa hatunaye tena. Asanteni sana.
Now may he rest in peace. In a book about his life, My Life, My Purpose, a Tanzanian president remembers, he documents how it was and the intrigues behind the scenes as he tried to negotiate a power sharing deal between former President Mwai Kibaki and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, to the point that he had to sidestep NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua and the current DP William Ruto in order to get the two into a room and ensure that there is some form of agreement between the two. He is quite a significant player in Kenya's political history, recent political history, to be more specific. Now, Mark Bichachi, I'll start with you on this one. What do you make of the significance of former President Benjamin William Mkapa?
First, my condolences to the people of Tanzania, his family, and his kin and kith for the loss of course, the former President Mkapa. Now, of course, this was one of the few African leaders who peacefully handed over power to Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete. He's one of those people who was considered as a leading light on the continent. He led Tanzania during the time after Nyerere and after between that time to the early 2000s when he handed over to Kikwete. So he is a significant leader, and as you correctly pointed out, he was a guiding light in Kenya's moment of crisis and many other countries, and therefore Africa as a whole will mourn him, but more so Tanzania has a very good memory of its leaders. They cherish their leaders, and indeed the people of Tanzania will be very sad at this loss, but we thank God for the good life that he lived and the example that he set, because he ruled at a time when handing over power peacefully was nearly impossible on this continent, and he led the way in that particular regard.
Right.
So rest in peace.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, when you look at what is seen and hailed as good leadership in today's world, what do you think our current leaders, both in Africa, East Africa, Africa, and the world over, can learn from this statesman?
Number one, it's how he understood how to stay afloat of the politics of the day. The many years he's lived past his presidency, he never tried to use his power to disturb the party that is CCM. He didn't disturb the presidents that ruled after him. He used his clout instead to guide the country towards the right path. He used his clout throughout Africa to negotiate peace deals and to join the ranks of African statesmen who are busy trying to stabilize the continent. He spent his time being generous progress. And that's what we need to learn from it, that he did not become president and then walk away into the shadows, but he took on a more elderly role, a more guidance role, and only stepped into countries that were in emergency status. But above and beyond that, he remained a card-holding and card-paying member of CCM, which is one of the things that I think Kenya needs to borrow from Tanzania, which is political party loyalty and fidelity to the principles of which the politician believes in, even when it is not politically advantageous to him. So he didn't need CCM anymore. He wasn't running for any office, but he remained a member of CCM and supported its activities, which is something I only wish could happen in this country.
Absolutely. Gloria, when you look at his life and how he was a leader politically, even while he was in office and even after, he did take that elder role, when, as Mark has put it, what do you make of that? And of course, what do you feel is the most significant thing that this president shall be remembered for?
Well, his legacy really stretches out. First of all, he was actually elected on the popularity of his anti-corruption campaign. So that is how he got into office, convincing the Tanzanians that he's going to actually make sure that the corruption that was going at a high peak would come down. And he was elected on that basis. One of the things that you will see later on is that he was then criticized for the ineffectiveness of his actions while he was in government in terms of cracking down the corruption situation. What I think we should learn from his leadership is that at the end of the day, you will be held accountable, whether in life or in death. And really, what is your legacy? Is your legacy going to be a building that stands with your name? Because when you go to the Wikipedia page, that is what they quote as a legacy. Or is your legacy going to be how you actually live your country and how the lives you have transformed of the people of your country? And when you look at the peace talks that he was involved in, not only in our post-election violence in 2008, but also in Burundi, when he stepped in to get involved in the peace talks between the Burundi government and the opposition. This is a man who actually took the responsibility that Africa really belongs to us. And so if something next door is happening and we need to make it right, then we step into the shoes and says, you know, what can I do in this situation? Should I be a part of the peace talks? Should I be a part of positive change? Or am I going to be a part of fueling further violence because of political differences? So I think that for me was the key learning point that our leaders should take home. And also, look out for your legacy.
Now, corruption was one of the things he campaigned against during his tenure, and Kenya does face quite a number of corruption incidences that we have been trying to come to the bottom of and hopefully get some form of reprieve in terms of people not facing these types of ills, losing taxpayers' monies in this way. And one of the stories that have reared itself up lately is the NYS scandal, the very latest with that. And what has come up this week is the fact that what is being termed this morning in one of the papers as the henchman of Kabura forfeit property. And we look at the front page of the Business Daily this morning. We are being told about the former NYS chief losing a house, land, and 2 Prados to that. This is because these have been deemed by the necessary security officials as proceeds of theft or corruption. Mark, what do you make of this? Is this enough? Should we, and why do you think this is coming up right now?
Well, number one, we need to congratulate the Asset Recovery Authority for a job well done in this particular regard. And when we came up with the Pokamla laws, our imagination as a nation was that despite the lengthy court processes, we should have a process by which we are able to seize back properties that are obviously proceeds of corruption. What I mean by obviously is if you find me tomorrow driving a brand new Prado and then you ask me where did I get the money to buy it and I can't explain it to you, then you as a state should have the right to say, you know what, we can tie this to corruption because I was involved in a particular tender, and what the Asset Recovery Authority has done is been able to show that the trail of how the money was transferred, 40 million sent to an account that was opened using a fake ID card. The cash then was transferred to somebody's wife who then bought a piece of land. So when you see such things, then obviously we should step in even before the court case is complete and give the people justice. And what is that justice? That in as much as we're waiting to jail this person, can we just get our money back and seize these assets? And this is the third or fourth time the asset recovery is doing this. Remember, there was the famous story, I think it was around December last year, when someone's house was taken and repossessed. So this is a very good way to go. It shortens the path to justice, and as you know, justice delayed is justice denied, and it also strengthens the fight against corruption, so people can understand that this is a serious fight. The president and the DPP, the DCI are not joking. Asset recovery is going to get you. So one way or another, justice is going to come at you, and this is so important. And we are seeing now the Pokamla Act actually being enforced and actually delivering fruit, and that's what needs to happen. So even as we wait to jail people, can Kenyans get their money back? And that seems to be happening, and it should happen a lot more.
Yes, absolutely. And Sam Wadime, who was the former finance director, is the former NYS chief that has lost Prados and land and a house that was valued at 21 million shillings. That's quite a bit. Gloria, what do you make of this development?
It's brilliant, but can it cut across? The NYS scandal is known for, there are so many people who've been mentioned in this scandal. Why are we only going for the small fish? Why are we not starting from the top, from where the scandal started from? Who had the duty of care? Who was responsible in that ministry? Down to, you know, let's not just also come here and say we are happy, we are clapping because some small fish down there have been told their cars have been taken. Yeah. Some people are walking around here and nothing is happening. So this is actually discrimination towards who we are serving justice to, or rather, you know, if the mention of the case had 7 people, then all 7 people, their assets should be frozen, investigations put in place, and then, you know, same cuts across. That's my only issue with what is happening here, is that we are focusing on the small fish.
We're focusing on the small fish. Yeah, and you can imagine if the 21 million is what the small fish have. I mean, 21 million worth of a house. Now, let's take a look at the war on COVID-19. There was a speculation earlier on this week after the president called for a meeting that would have him and stakeholders discuss the spike in infections and the possibility of reclosing the boundaries in order to, you know, seclude well, we only have 2 counties that are untouched by COVID-19, and that is what we know, not that we are 100% sure of. So when we look at a situation where we have reopened the economy, as it were, and we're having what was expected according to expert opinion, a spike in infections, what do you think would happen in the next coming weeks? Is this something that we should consider? Should the country be moving in a direction where we reclose the borders of our counties to protect ourselves from the spread of COVID-19? Mark?
You know, let me tell you, Trix, that there's no point in closing our international borders when the disease is already spreading among our communities. The danger is no longer, is it going to come from China? Is it going to come from anywhere? It is your neighbor. It is your husband. It is your wife. It is in our communities. So this is no longer an issue of closing borders. And it is no longer also an issue of shutting down the country. And I'll tell you why that is an impossibility. Already, people are starving. People do not have resources, and the government does not have a large amount of money to feed all of us and to make sure that when we stay at home isolated, we are able to stay alive in terms of the nutrition that we need, or in terms, indeed, of the houses. We've had of many landlords chasing people out of houses. So the truth of the matter is, unfortunately, I do not think lockdown or locking down county borders is an option anymore. The only thing that Kenyans can do, number one, is wear your masks, wash your hands, social distance, But number two, your governor and what he's doing with the money that he was given by the national government to make sure there are beds and there's ventilators and there's enough to take care of the 10% or so who present with COVID symptoms are taken care of. So right now it's about you protecting yourself and making sure your governor has put in place all the beds and oxygen masks and tanks and things like that that are required to keep you alive. If you happen to be in one of those counties that have 9 beds, which are just for the governor, his wife, and children, then you are in big trouble. And that's now where the chickens come home to roost. Who did you vote for? It actually matters at this time. So that's the reality. I do not foresee a situation where we're going into lockdown. We can't afford it. The people in Kibra can't afford it. The people in Buruburu, the middle class, can't afford it. People have run through their savings. Businesses are struggling. So it's not going to be economically possible to do a full lockdown. So it's going to continue like this. The numbers will rise, and let Kenyans do the responsible thing.
Yeah, I love that you brought out the issue of elections, because it's a painful reality, particularly in this time, that when you vote for a specific person, for whatever reasons you are voting for them, you literally just get what you get. There's no going around it. And if they're not the right person in terms of governance, then it is the people on the ground that suffer. And right now we are at 261,027 is the total number of samples taken, while this has confirmed cases have come up to 15,601, and we have, of course, deaths that have been tallied to 263 of those who, of course, the samples are still being taken. These numbers cannot be dependent on 100% because not everyone exhibits symptoms and not everyone makes their way to the testing centers. And also there's an issue with those because some counties claim that they are not sufficiently equipped to go ahead and test, and particularly to the largest numbers possible. Now, Gloria, what do you make of this and the possibility of reclosing borders to ensure that we are not having inter-community, inter-county infections and intercommunal infections?
I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
We are having those inter-county infections. We are having them. And actually, the purpose for locking down at the beginning was to contain the virus, the spread of the virus, because at that time we could actually trace where the virus was centralized, or, if it had come in through a certain person, we could do the contact tracing. But as of now, really, if you talk to most of the people who have actually come about and said, I've had COVID-19, they can't really tell you where they got it from. They can't really trace back, their activities or who they might have interacted with. So the lockdown really, I mean, if we're just doing it for show to tick a box, yes, let's do it. What you actually are seeing now with our government, this is where from the beginning we never really had a resiliency plan. We never really had an approach on how we are going to deal with this when we had the time. Because at the beginning of a pandemic, or actually a crisis, is you have a plan. When you've drafted the plan and we are going to do containment, and if we contain, we reach certain numbers, and then from there we're going to do this, open up the economy in this way. Really, even if you lock down, and this is the question I pose to our education sector as well, now that we've said we've suspended the school year, what does that mean come January when we still have the virus? Does that mean that we really are going to have, there's a difference, or will we just go to school with masks? Because if we're going to go to school with masks, we might have well gone to school with masks this year. So the issue that you're seeing that is happening right now with our country is that we really don't have a resiliency plan. And what is unfortunate...
But one would argue that it was unprecedented, so...
Not really, because we do have, there
was a gap where we could have...
There was a gap where we could have had it. We have ad hoc committees, which you've seen people resigning from. So we've had actual, not ample, but some kind of time to sit down, put a technical team, technocrats, to say, this is how we're going to approach it. So locking down the country right now is going to be just to tick a box, or, and it's not really going to help us economically or socially.
Yeah, she's mentioned the ad hoc committee, and there's a story that I want Mark, just comment on it briefly. Senator Sakaja, what did you make of what happened this week?
I even wrote about it in my article in the Standard yesterday, and I congratulated him for doing something that many politicians have never done in this country, at least in my memory, and that is to apologize and step down from his position simply because he had dishonored that particular position by his actions. And for me, to err is human, but to own up to your mistakes and actually go to court and pay the fine and face the consequences of your decision is leadership. And that's where we need to go. We need to get to that point where powerful business people, powerful politicians are able to just go and deal with their consequences. Look at the situation that is happening at Kibos, for example, where residents are looking for justice simply because the children of a certain businessman allegedly did a crime and they're trying to escape scot-free. And that's the issue with this country, that we do not want to pay the price for our choices. That needs to be corrected. And for me, I congratulate Sakaja for taking that step.
We congratulate him, but we would have hoped that he wouldn't have done what he did to start with. And I guess that's the point that Gloria wants to make.
Don't congratulate things that, you know, it's like we are rewarding things that you should do. So we are congratulating you for apologizing, for doing something wrong. I don't understand. That's the levels, we've really stooped low, and our expectation is so low on leadership that we are now congratulating people for coming forward to say sorry for having done the wrong thing.
Mark?
Let me just respond.
Yes.
There is an MP who slapped a lady in the precincts of Parliament. He has never apologized. There's an MP who allegedly shot someone, never apologized. Let me tell you.
So that's the benchmark.
In governing an entire country, when someone does the right thing, and correcting a mistake is the right thing, you need to look at Jesus and the tax collector called Zacchaeus. When Zacchaeus paid back and he did the right thing, Jesus told him as much, that now salvation has come to you and your household. So we cannot disregard the power of making amends when things go wrong, because
Jesus congratulated him. Is that what you're saying?
And for me, any leader who's willing to own up to their mistakes and correct them, those people are friends of mine, because that's where we need to go, where people, even the corrupt, when they go to EACC and say, listen, I stole money, here's money I'm giving back to the country.
We congratulate
they should be encouraged, because if more of that happens, then the country will be better for it.
Okay. On that very divisive note, we're going to call it a discussion. Thank you very much, Mark Bichachi, for being a part of this discussion. Mark Bichachi is a political strategist, and Gloria Odwobe, who is a youth policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us today in studio. We're going to take a short break. Coming up on the other side is Brian Aseli, going to bring us the latest in entertainment. What do you have in store for us today, Aseli?
It's going to be pretty much hot. We are going to talk to Nigerian princess. She's bringing the jollof on the